In 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed west from Spain in search of India. In his daring venture across the Atlantic Ocean, he and his sailors came upon the islands of the Caribbean that stretch more than 2,000 miles from the tip of Florida to the coast of Venezuela. He called them the Indies. Columbus was the first European to discover these islands, but people had been living here for centuries. These islands separate the Caribbean Sea from the Atlantic Ocean, and today they are called the West Indies. The Spanish were the first to colonize and farm in the West Indies. They colonized the majority of the islands, bringing Africans to work as slaves in the fields. Then England, France, and the Netherlands realized the significance of the lush vegetation of these islands. Soon, the Europeans had turned the fertile soils into coffee and tobacco plantations. Over the next few hundred years, the islands gained their independence, but the Spanish and African influence can still be seen everywhere throughout the islands today. Each island has its own character and culture, but they all share many of the same physical features. They all have the same hot tropical climate for most of the year. They withstand fierce hurricanes that batter the shoreline every summer and fall. The vegetation is mostly tropical rainforest on these islands, but some, like Cuba, also have temperate grasslands. Sugarcane, coffee, bananas, and other crops are growing on most of the islands. These products are some of the main exports of the Caribbean. Tourism is another major industry in the Caribbean. Cruise ships are a common sight in these waters. The larger islands, Puerto Rico, Jamaica, Cuba, and Hispaniola, are actually the exposed tops of underwater mountains. Millions of years ago, they were part of a mountain chain that linked North and South America. Other islands were formed by volcanic eruptions. Two tectonic plates that form the Earth's crust meet in the West Indies. Over the years, as the plates shifted and collided, volcanoes erupted, and these volcanoes are responsible for creating the islands of the Caribbean. In fact, several volcanoes are still active on these islands. The Bahamas and smaller island chains are coral islands. They formed from the buildup of the skeletons of tiny sea animals called coral. Over millions of years, this buildup created islands. You'll find a diversity of ethnic backgrounds in the Caribbean islands. A long history of colonization has given these islands a mix of cultures and races. The Spanish, French, and English brought their languages and cultures. These traditions blended with those of the Africans and indigenous peoples to create the rich cultures of the islands today. The island nations of the Caribbean may be some of the smallest countries in the world, but they are the main destination for the millions of tourists who visit and are home to the people who live here. The bounty of natural resources on these islands first encouraged colonization that eventually spread throughout the Western Hemisphere. Today, the influence of Caribbean culture, like music, dance, and food, can be found throughout North and South America.